Jack Kearney's spurred boots dug into the dusty trail as the horizon bled gold with the first hints of dawn. He had ridden through the canyons west of his family's ranch for decades, but today the wind carried a strange urgency, like the whisper of ghosts, warning him of something he could not yet see. Jack's grandfather's words echoed in his head. A Kearney never leaves a soul in the lurch. Swear it, boy. Swear it till your last breath. He rode past an abandoned windmill and the skeletal remains of a burnt-down homestead. Then, by an old sycamore, his heart caught in his chest. Two girls, no older than 17 and 19, were bound to the tree with rough hemp, their dresses torn, eyes wide with terror. A gag muffled their pleas, but Jack recognized the glimmer of defiance, not fear. He dismounted, careful not to spook his horse, Whiskey, a black stallion with eyes like midnight. The girls' captors, a pair of notorious outlaws known as the Iron Spurs, were nowhere in sight, probably scouting the distant hills. Jack's pulse surged with a singular purpose. He had one chance before sunrise to save them, or else their fates would be sealed. Drawing his Colt, he whispered to the girls, "I'm Jack Kearney. Don't make a sound. Trust me." He cut their ropes with a small hunting knife and helped them to their feet. They were fragile yet fierce, trembling but unwilling to collapse, entirely under the weight of their plight. "I'm May and Layla," said the older, her voice quivering. "Please, they'll come back for us." "I know," Jack said, his jaw tight. "We ride fast. Hold tight." As they mounted, the first gunshot split the dawn. The Iron Spurs had returned, their horses thundering across the prairie. Jack urged Whiskey forward, the girls clinging to him as they galloped toward the distant canyon. Bullets tore through the air, kicking up clouds of dust, but Jack moved like a shadow, a phantom rider against the waking sun. 3 close calls later, all 3 were battered, bruised, but alive. By mid-morning, they reached Jack's ranch, a sprawling compound of weathered wood and hardy livestock, tucked between a creek and the rising hills. Jack guided the girls inside, tending their wounds with water, bandages, and whispers of comfort. He watched them carefully. These were not the kind of girls to collapse and wait. Their eyes were wild with spirit. As the sun climbed, Jack realized the weight of his promise, not just saving them but protecting them. Knowing the Iron Spurs would not forget, and somewhere deep in his chest, a new oath took root, to guard these girls, to fight for them, even if it cost him his own life. By late afternoon, the ranch felt alive in a way Jack hadn't expected. Whiskey pawed at the dirt, restless, while May and Lila tried to clean themselves and regain some dignity. Jack had patched up their cuts and bruises, but one thing was clear: these girls were not staying hidden. They were fighters, each with a spark of defiance that made Jack's chest ache in a strange, unfamiliar way. "Can you ride?" he asked gently. May, the older, nodded. "We can try." Layla looked skeptical but willing. Jack helped them mount horses, a practice run before sunset. That's when the first of the Iron Spurs arrived, not in force, but a lone scout on a gray mare, his rifle aimed. Jack's heart tightened. There was no escaping notice now, but he moved like a seasoned rustler, weaving through ridges, kicking his horse into a hard gallop. Bullets ricocheted off rocks, splintering the canyon walls around them. One shot caught Whiskey's flank, and he staggered, throwing Jack to the side. Leela's scream cut the air, and May lunged to steady Jack as he remounted. Blood dripped, bruises burned, yet Jack didn't falter. For 3 days they rode, hiding in the shadows of canyons, fording rivers, and evading capture with clever misdirection. Every night, around a fire, Jack tended their wounds, and a strange closeness formed. May laughed once, a brittle, haunted sound, but it was enough to thaw a piece of Jack's solitude-hardened heart. Layla's eyes sparkled with cautious admiration. During the ride, Jack discovered that the girls were no ordinary victims. May had a knack for tracking and survival, while Layla's sharp mind noticed every trap, every potential ambush. Their courage amazed him, and the unspoken bond between them deepened with every perilous sunset. One evening, under a crimson sky, a final confrontation erupted. The Iron Spurs cornered them near a dry creek bed. Guns flared, horses bucked, and Jack fought with a ferocity only desperation could summon. He was hit once, grazed on the shoulder, but managed to drive the outlaws off with a cunning trap, a loose boulder, a startled steer, and sheer audacity. As silence fell, broken only by the girl's heavy breathing, Jack realized how much he had risked. The iron spurs were wounded but not gone. He looked at May and Lila, both alive, both fierce, both impossible to forget. The third morning found Jack Kearney nursing a raw shoulder and a simmering fire of determination. Whiskey poured at the corral, restless, sensing the unease that gripped the ranch. May and Lila moved quietly, tending to the few remaining injuries, but there was an unspoken tension. Everyone knew the iron spurs were still out there, circling, waiting for their moment. Jack had no intention of hiding. He wanted them gone for good. But first he had to teach the girls to defend themselves. May gripped a rifle with a natural ease, her knuckles white but steady, while Lila practiced throwing knives with uncanny precision. Jack watched them, a strange mix of pride and admiration swelling in his chest. These girls weren't just survivors, they were warriors. By sundown, the outlaws arrived in force. Dust rose in angry clouds as their horses thundered across the prairie. Jack mounted Whiskey, his Colt gleaming in the dying light. May and Lila flanked him, armed and resolute, their eyes fierce with courage. The battle was brutal. Bullets screamed through the air, ricocheting off rock and wood. Jack's mind moved like lightning, anticipating every move, every feint. May took down one of the iron spurs with a steady shot to the shoulder, while Lila used her knife to disable another. Jack's heart pounded not just from the fight, but from seeing these girls transform into forces he could trust with his life. Amid the chaos, a rifle cracked dangerously close. Jack dove to shield the girls, but the recoil sent him sprawling. A sharp pain seared his side. He gritted his teeth, refusing to scream. May dragged him behind a boulder, her hands trembling but skilled as she bandaged him on the fly. Lila kept watch, eyes scanning the horizon, her jaw set like iron. 3 days of riding, hiding, and fighting had brought them here to this reckoning. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack realized the truth he had long denied. He loved these girls, not just for their beauty, not just for their bravery, but for their spirit, unbroken and wild as the frontier itself. The iron spurs, seeing their comrades fallen, began to retreat into the shadows of the canyon. Jack rose, wincing, and watched them disappear, leaving the prairie eerily silent. May and Lila approached, their faces illuminated by the last amber rays. Jack extended a hand, brushing dust from Lila's cheek, and then May's. For a moment, time slowed. Words were unnecessary. Their bond, tempered in danger, forged in courage, spoke louder than any declaration. That night, under the star-strewn sky, they camped by the creek. Whiskey drank quietly nearby, the river murmuring like an old lullaby. Jack traced his fingers over the scars and bruises, but his heart swelled with a fierce, protective love. He knew the iron spurs might return, and the danger was far from over, but he would face it. He would face anything for them. And deep in his chest, beneath the ache and adrenaline, a promise took root: no one would ever harm May or Lila again. Not while Jack Kearney drew breath, not while his oath to protect, fight, and love burned like the frontier sun across the endless prairie. Dawn broke cold and gray over the canyon, painting the prairie in steel and shadow. Jack Kearney stood on the ridge, his eyes scanning the horizon. The iron spurs had regrouped overnight, and this time they came with vengeance burning in their hearts. Jack knew this would be the final reckoning. May and Lila rode beside him, their faces pale but resolute, knowing that retreat was no longer an option. The girls had grown under his protection, no longer frightened captives but fierce allies. May's sharp aim and Lila's cunning strategy had saved them countless times. Yet, Jack carried the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. If he fell, there would be no one to shield them from the ruthless outlaws. The first shots cracked across the morning air, echoing against the canyon walls. Horses screamed, hooves thundered, dust billowed in violent clouds. Jack's Colt spat fire with practiced precision, each bullet finding its mark. May and Lila, side by side, moved like shadows, their weapons striking true. For a moment, it seemed as though they could win this, yet Jack, knew the odds were perilous. In a desperate maneuver, Jack drove Whiskey over a ridge to flank the attackers, but a hidden rifle caught him in the chest. He fell forward, wind knocked out of him, the world tilting in a blur of dust and gunfire. May and Lila screamed, rushing to him, but Jack forced them back. "Go, don't let them take you," he gasped, blood seeping through his shirt. His eyes, dark with pain yet fierce with determination, met theirs. "Ride, fast, live." The girls hesitated, tears streaming down their faces, but Jack's hand tightened, urging them forward. With a final glance, he urged Whiskey into a gallop, charging into the iron spurs with nothing but courage and fury. The canyon became a storm of gunfire and chaos. One by one, Jack felled the outlaws, but not without cost. A rifle cracked, and Jack was thrown from his horse, his body crumpling among the rocks. May and Lila, from a safe distance, watched in horror as their protector and savior fell. But in his sacrifice, the remaining outlaws fled, broken and terrified. Silence returned to the canyon, heavy with the aftermath of battle. May ran to Jack's side, lifting his head into her lap, Lila holding his hand, trembling. Jack's breath was shallow, but a small, weary smile touched his lips. You're safe. Because of you," he whispered. "Remember the oath." His eyes closed, the fight leaving him as the dawn's first light bathed the canyon in gold. May pressed her lips to his brow, tears mingling with the dust of battle, while Lila traced the lines of his face as if to memorize him forever. Days later, May and Lila remained at the Kearney Ranch, tending the fields, caring for the horses, and remembering the man who had given everything for them. They told stories of Jack's bravery, of Whiskey's steadfast loyalty, and of the iron bond forged under gunfire and peril. His sacrifice became legend, whispered in saloons and around campfires. The Rustler, who loved fiercely, who rode hard, and who kept his oath even unto death. Though Jack was gone, his presence lingered. May and Lila often rode at sunset, feeling him beside them in the wind and the rustle of the prairie grass. The ranch, once lonely and quiet, now hummed with life and love, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds formed in the crucible of danger. And somewhere beyond the hills, Jack's spirit rode forever, a shadow against the horizon, a cowboy who gave his heart, his life, and his oath for love, for honor, for the girls who became his family. May and Lila would never forget him. The Rustler's oath had been kept, and though tragedy had claimed his life, the legend of Jack Kearney, the hero of the West, the protector, the lover, would echo across the prairie for generations to come.